What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Buffalo Dash. We're on Tuesdays just for this week, but that's no big deal. Kieran, let's jump right into it. The Buffs improved to 2-0 on the season. A much-needed road win, in my opinion. Sets us up really nicely in the Pac-12 South. Arguably a more complete game played by this team, but I want to get your thoughts on what went right, what went wrong.
I think, yeah. So I think, we saw a lot of good things. Comparing the game to my predictions in my crossover over, with Stanford pregame, I predicted a much sloppier game than we ended up seeing from the Buffs overall, which was, I would say, very sort of. It definitely gave me a lot more confidence in the Buffs. I did not necessarily expect the offense to be able to sort of have the discipline that they ended up being able to have. The defense wasn't able to step up in quite the same ways that it was against UCLA. And as we had kind of talked about in the crossover show, we weren't sure whether the CU Buffs defense was as crazy dominant as they had appeared in the UCLA game, either by virtue of it being a fluke on CU's part, just a really, really poor UCLA defense, or a combination of the two. I think what we sort of can walk away from that seeing is that UCLA didn't have the best defense in the world. I don't think it was a fluke by any means on the Buffs side, because Nate Landman came up absolutely enormous again this week, had an huge game, but I think that what the Buffs sort of showed us is that they're a much better sort of rounded team than we were necessarily able to completely see in that UCLA game. And, we were able to see a lot more sort of spreading the ball to different players. It just wasn't, absolutely relying on Jarek Broussard the entire time, although he did have a phenomenal game. Sam Neuer, again, played just conservative offense just within himself. And overall, I think that, we can walk away from that win knowing that the Buffs have a little bit of a sense of their own identity, despite how short this season's been so far. But how about yourself? What were your sort of big takeaways?
I was really impressed with the offense once again. I thought Sam Neuer looked really good again. The interception, he tried to test his arm a little bit, and the defender made a great play. You really can't hold him to that. But like you said, he played well within his means, and he was spreading the ball really nicely. We saw a lot of promise out of our younger guys. Brendan Rice caught his first collegiate touchdown. He's definitely become a weapon. Dimitri Stanley implemented himself as a huge target in that offense. We saw Laviska's younger brother, Levante, come up huge in that game. And quietly, Broussard had a really good game again. He wasn't having this. Well, he didn't have this huge game like he did against UCLA, but quietly he ran for over 100 yards, and that's all you need him to do. I think defensively, I would say we played a better game, especially in the first half. We played more complete, but yet again in the second half, we seem to kind of turn off the switch. And while it's okay to do that against UCLA and Stanford, it's definitely not okay to do that against a team like USC, who we'll get to in a little bit, who's going to be one of our bigger games on our schedule now that we've set ourselves up for success at 2-0. But I thought overall, again, this team played really good football. Like you said, Nate Landman came up really huge. He's just a force to be reckoned with, and really that stepping stone for that defense. Him and Neuer both got both offensive and defensive player of the week from the Pac-12. That just goes to show you how good this team really is. That the amount of disrespect, I want to say disrespect, but this team got little attention. It was picked second to last in the Pac-12, last in the Pac-12 South. Now that's a team that's 2-0, could potentially contend for a Pac-12 South title, and is looking like a really good football team. And honestly, if they keep playing this way, if they fix their issues on defense, which I think they can, because they're almost there, because they played better than the UCLA game, but they still had a few issues to go by. This offense is clicking on all cylinders. And I was really impressed with especially the injury on the O-line. They looked really awesome again this past weekend. I have complete and full confidence in this team that they can go out there and they can compete against a team like USC and put up big numbers like they have been and really prove themselves as a contender in the Pac-12.
I mean, I think I think that they did play this sort of, a very they played they played an all around solid game. They did let up on the gas toward the end there, which I would almost argue against the Stanford isn't even necessarily. I mean, like, I think it's not okay against a Stanford or a UCLA just because we got away with both of those wins, but it was not by any means. I mean, that was not a 3-4 point game throughout that entire. I mean, you know what I mean. That was up until the third quarter or so. We were in. We held a commanding lead, and we started to just let up a little bit on both sides of the ball. Started to, we both, from just 3 and outs to letting them sort of, move the ball way easier than they ever should have in the first place. And so I think that against a team with the kind of talent that a USC has, or whoever else we end up playing, and whoever else, our schedule ends up looking like we play for the rest of the season, given that that's, presented itself to be sort of a much more dynamic thing than we might have originally sort of suspected. I think that it's going to be essential that we play the brand of football that, fortunately, we've come out playing in the first quarter of the last couple of games, because the difference between the CU football team that we're seeing play right now versus the CU football team that for all the years previous that I've paid attention to as a CU football fan in my time at CU, CU up until this year had always been a team that would come out slow, would find themselves in the third quarter or so, and down by 21, and all of a sudden decide, oh, we want to play in this football game, claw back, but it might not be, it's too little too late, it might not be quite enough, or they're playing a super talented team and it wasn't enough to get themselves back in the game. Now they find themselves in sort of a reverse position where they're coming out on teams the way that they want to be coming out, where they're coming out just playing their own brand of football, moving the ball down the field, extremely conservatively but efficiently, and finding the end zone when they need to, and just continuing to rack up the score, forcing 3 and outs, getting the ball back, and rinse and repeat, which is phenomenal to see. And I'm super glad that whatever's happened, sort of, whether it's in the locker room or what, with Carl Durrell and his staff, to be able to rally the CU team, to be able to sort of come out on a completely different foot than they've had a tendency to be able to come out in the past is, I think, super exciting, because I think, keeping your foot on the gas is a lot easier than, trying to make up the ground that you already lost. And so that gives me a lot of, optimism for the games going forward. And at the same time, they're going to need to, be able to find some discipline and stuff. But I was, as you mentioned, with Brendan Rice, Levante Chenault, seeing them kind of get into the mix, out like in the, Sam Neuer sort of actually starting to pass the ball a little bit, finding those young receivers that we talked about. We knew we were going to be super talented coming into this year, but we had sort of no idea what they looked like. Levante was suspended against UCLA. I think it was really exciting to see that those guys are bringing the talent that they were sort of hyped up to bring. And then to also see at the same time, veterans like Dimitri Stanley, who, we know are one of the anchors to this team from a leadership perspective and things like that, to see him sort of have, his moment to shine with that, with one of those initial touchdowns where where Sam Neuer found him over that slant, and he absolutely burned the entire Stanford secondary. Literally had 4 guys chasing him into the end zone. I was super, super exciting.
Yeah. I think something you said, kind of what I'm going to say is that this brand of CU football is not obviously not what we saw last year. And if anything, Neuer seems to be commanding the field and commanding the offense better than Montez is. There's no doubt Montez had that cannon. He was able to throw like 60 to 70-yard bombs with ease, and that's just what the offense was last year. But it seems like we've unlocked a part of this offense where while we're playing conservatively, while he's not taking deep shots downfield, we're consistently moving the chains, and we're relying on both sides of our game. The run game, just pounding the rock and getting those 7 yards on first down, and then a quick 10-yard slant on second down, and all of a sudden 2 plays in, you've gained another first down. And it's just like in the situations last year where Montez was put in, especially under pressure, those situations he would curl up in a ball and take the sack. We're just not seeing that with Neuer. We're seeing Neuer use his legs and escape the pocket. While maybe only for a 3-yard gain, that's better than a 10-yard loss for a sack, much like we saw last year with Montez. And like I said, if this offense just keeps it going and they stay healthy, which thankfully they've done so far, and they're only going to get more people back. Katie Nixon was at practice today. He was running full speed, and he's going to be another weapon to add to that super talented wide receiving core that we've come to know finally. And if this defense can fix the things that, like I said, that they need to fix, that playing a complete 4 quarters of football, that the defense they played in the first half against Stanford, which was fantastic, they need to replicate that in the second half. And they can't create the situations where it's okay, you let them score. It's a 3-point game. It's an onside kick. Well, you never know what happened. We saw what happened with the ASU-USC game with the onside kick. That totally changed the game, Thankfully, we recovered it, but it's just like this defense is capable of keeping that 35-16 lead that we had, and the offense was, I probably could have added more points on the board, but they did their job in scoring 35 points. It's up to the defense to hold the Stanford team to 16 points. They didn't, but, they, like I said, they bend, but they didn't break, and they're on the cusp of playing a complete 4 quarters of football. And I think that this week is definitely going to be that fine-tuning that Durrell needs to see. And, obviously they have now another full week going up to the USC game that we'll talk about right after this to really, really fine-tune the mistakes they're finding. But really what it's going to come down to, it's going to come down to those big plays by Nate Landman, those big plays by Mustafa Johnson, what that we're seeing come up in crunch time that's really holding this defense together in those key moments in the game.
I mean, so I think I completely agree. I think that you're spot on with seeing, they bent, but they didn't break. And I think what we're also starting to see, though, and it's important to note, is that they're bending less and less. They're starting. I mean, we're no longer sort of this team that has talent that hangs on by the skin of our teeth because, because we managed to just summon the willpower, and we have a single standout player like a Visca or something like that. But this year we're a team that is complete. We're a team that knows to play our roles as individuals, and as a result, it comes together and is so far sort of yielding the result that we want to be seeing. But with that, I think let's we can start sort of using what we learned this week to look to the future. We now have a very intriguing matchup with CU playing USC as our next matchup, given the fact that next week's game has been canceled for the Buffs. And so, while the Buffs are still sort of working out whether they're going to play somebody else out of conference, perhaps this weekend, what are your thoughts on the fact that CU, USC, 2 undefeated teams in the Pac-12 South right now?
I'd say you're crazy. Honestly, before the season, if you told me that the Week 4 game between an undefeated CU and an undefeated USC could potentially be the deciding game in the Pac-12 South, they'd be like, "You're crazy, man." But surprisingly enough, we've come to that point in the season where this is a very real possibility for the Buffs now. And I don't want to get ahead of myself, and I don't want to jinx anything, but seeing the way USC played against ASU and U of A, they seem like a very beatable and vulnerable team. In a game that ASU probably should have won, but that's a whole other discussion on why. And a team that went down to the wire with an Arizona team that maybe we didn't think was as good as we thought they would. But, you think a nationally ranked team would march into Arizona and blow them out, in my opinion. That didn't happen. The way CU's been playing, obviously they've been playing really good, but obviously there's a lot of areas that they can improve that we just touched on. And it's a very real possibility that that because of this ASU cancellation, if CU does beat USC next week and improves to 3-0 on the season, they'll stay first in the Pac-12, and then theoretically they only have to beat one of Arizona or Utah, because if it comes down to it, if USC wins out, we lose to say Utah, but we beat Arizona, we're 4-1, they're 5-1. We still hold the head-to-head tiebreaker. We go to that Pac-12 championship game. So this game really is important not only for CU but for USC as well. And honestly, no one thought this game would be. But what are you? What do you think about this this now super intriguing matchup next week?
Yeah, so I think a few things. We obviously had extremely tempered expectations about what to expect from CU coming into this year. That was part of why, you and I initially were very sort of high on having Brendan Lewis with the starting quarterback spot. We were, our mindset was this year was a rebuilding year, sort of a throwaway season with the coronavirus and all of that. Why not, take that time to develop this young freshman quarterback? And we were obviously proven wrong with that. And then moving forward from that, Neuer, so Neuer and this team, this much more complete sort of CU Buffs team than I think we sort of ever expected to see, has outblown the entire conference's expectations. At the beginning of the season, CU had the longest odds to win the Pac-12 compared to USC had the second closest odds behind Oregon. And so, USC came in ranked, I think it was 20th, I believe. And we, remain unranked. We were unranked. I'm not saying we should be ranked, but I'm just saying that, as a team that had has been consistent underdogs, in terms of how Vegas has been comparing us to our opponents, and how and the odds that we were just given to win the Pac-12 this season. The fact that this is coming down to the team that formerly was given the longest odds versus second best odds, I think is absurd. But I think, in my opinion, it's a testament to the coaching that we've seen from Karl Dorrell since he's come to CU. This is a guy who had, experience at both the college and the professional level, experience at CU. And I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I did not know a ton about, besides the fact that, he had previously coached and played at UCLA. He'd previously coached at CU once upon a time, bumped around the was with the Dolphins in there. But compared to Mel Tucker, it seemed as though a much less attractive candidate on paper, compared to Mel Tucker's SEC experience and things like that. And I've got to say that overall, I've been much more impressed by Dorrell, and that's not a matter of being salty about Mel Tucker having sort of left fairly abruptly on uncertain terms in March, but the fact that Dorrell has shown the ability to be able to bring this team together in a very, very cohesive way. Meanwhile, and a team that would not necessarily, like, our recruiting class hasn't been the best in the Pac-12. There's no other factors there that have been otherwise giving CU a particular advantage. And I think what then sort of becomes the evening out factor between USC and CU is the fact that I think that USC is not a particularly well coached team with a lot of talent, and we're a team with some decent talent, but has undergone 3 head coaching changes in the last 3 years, and then as a result, are sort of just dealing with the cards we've been dealt. And this coaching staff has managed to deal with this sort of hodgepodge mix of kids that they've inherited and bring them together in a way that sort of says it doesn't matter, who we recruit and why, why you were recruited, or, what the circumstances are under which we're playing, and, whether the stadium has 55,000 people in it, 100,000 people in it, or nobody in it, or 470 trees in it for all I care, as it did at Stanford. Like, this is a team that is just going in, doing business, and getting the job done week in and week out. And so I think the fact that it's sort of taken that sort of like we just go to work mentality. I really like sort of seeing that, and that gives me a lot of optimism against USC, which is sort of has all the tradition that USC has is just a very, very successful football program.
Yeah, you said it best. We hit the over on Vegas's win projection for us at I think it was like ±1. Well, we have 2 now, so you can suck it. But like you said, it's the get in, put in the work, get the win, get out, look to the next week. And the fact that CU had, like you said, the fact that CU has this opportunity to go in next week and really make a statement for themselves and beat a potentially ranked nationally team and set themselves up to contend for not only a Pac-12 South title, but the Pac-12 title and playing a decent bowl game in the first time in God knows how many years. It's like you said, it's a testament to the fact that Carl Durrell and this coaching staff has taken this really this I don't want to say ragtag, but this very mixed mash batch of players who were recruited by oh man, it's not McCartney. I lost the name. By the coach. Yeah.
Mike McIntyre.
McIntyre, yeah, you're right. McIntyre, by Tucker. And then now by Durrell, it's like, wow, like not only like it's just like a testament to what they've done in this program and really instill the fact that hey, we might not be the most talented team on the field, but we'll sure as hell put the most effort in and really grind for that extra yard because that's what wins football games. And a season like this, like that's the perfect time to show off that hey, we're not this rollover, and we've shown the past week beating UCLA and beating Stanford that hey, we're here to contend for a contender spot in the Pac-12, contend for a title. That hey, even though it's in the Coliseum, that this is a game that USC shouldn't take lightly, and I really think we have a chance to go in there and make a statement not only in the Pac-12 but in college football that hey, this team was disrespected, but we're not someone to mess with.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting about sort of all of this is that we obviously can't get quite as much of the sort of behind the scenes access in terms of even like like the videos and this and that in terms of how this team's culture has been built over the course of the last 2 months, 3 months, over the course of the summer. But it was over the nobody showed up on campus, including the football players until late August. So we obviously don't have an up close glimpse and nearly as up close of a glimpse into sort of how all that's going down as we normally would. And what I kind of love about this year's CU team and what gives me a lot of sort of optimism going forward is the fact that they to them, whether we know or not, it isn't what matters to them. It's like what matters to them is the fact that they were given the lowest odds to go out and succeed this year, and have proven people wrong once, have proven people wrong twice, and are showing no signs of stopping. And I think the fact that even just the fact that then in the CU football's tweets and things like that, the hashtag CU for culture, the CU capitalized and stuff like that. I mean, obviously some of that's a little bit of just a marketing thing, branding thing, whatever. But some of it's also just the fact that that's what they've decided to sort of build their identity. The fact that this is a culture shift for CU football, and a culture shift that you and I had talked about, before the season that CU was in need of because CU had lost this win culture that we, had known once upon a time, before you or I were born, and have now, had sort of a glimpse of back in 2016 when we went to the Pac-12 championship then, and then we thought it could be a new CU, coming, rising up from the ashes, and that crashed and burned quickly. This is showing me signs of much more longevity that I think we can, have a lot of optimism about for, not just this year and not just, the prospects of whatever, comes out of this year, but for the years to come following this. And so I've just been pleasantly surprised, I feel like, at every turn with what this coaching staff has sort of brought to the table with this year's CU team.
Yeah, I completely agree. And probably one of the weirdest transitions. What's going on with the Pac-12, man? This It's crazy. Like I thought like the cancellations in the other Power Five conferences were bad, but like this has gotten to a point where it's like okay, like it's potential that Utah doesn't play a football game this season. It's like my question is like at what point does it like not become fair? Like I know it's just like a dumb thing to say, but like Utah's not getting the opportunity to show themselves on the field and contend for a spot in the North. It's like okay, this is getting kind of interesting here. Like at what point they're running out of time to start playing games?
Yeah, I mean it is definitely interesting, right? And so I think the Pac-12 is obviously being much more sort of cautious with the way that they're dealing with their testing protocols than some of the other conferences are. I mean, we saw after Trevor Lawrence had tested positive for the coronavirus, that he was still on the sideline of the Clemson Notre Dame game, but just not playing and just wearing a mask and stuff, which didn't kind of totally seem like quarantine to me. Versus, on the other hand, we saw when Stanford went up to play Oregon that Davis Mills, the Stanford quarterback, was ruled out for the game completely and then forced to quarantine because of a positive coronavirus test, which the Pac-12 later, revealed to have been sort of a bit of a false positive sort of in the test reading process. And so, there's obviously a very different approach being taken by the various conferences in terms of just the severity with which they treat this virus and stuff. Some of that comes down to a little bit of sort of the geopolitics of our country, and a country that has which all of which has been sort of highlighted completely in over the course of the last month, by the presidential election and stuff.
Yeah.
But without delving too deep into that and reading too deep into that, all we know is that certain teams have played football this year. I mean, in the Pac-12, certain teams have played football, certain teams haven't played football, certain teams have played more games than others, less games than others, and what does, the future hold? And I think that, fair, like in terms of the fairness aspect and things like that, I mean, a lot of that comes down to, I think, the way that different schools have been sort of handling the way that they approach the coronavirus. I know that both Stanford and USC are completely online. They have been since the beginning of school. I know for you and I here in Boulder that CU's done this hybrid of classes, but we had this period of time where we had to sort of had quasi stay-at-home orders from the city of Boulder in order to rein in the amount of coronavirus cases that we were seeing in the city of Boulder amongst 18 to 22-year-olds and stuff. And so I think that, what we're seeing is a little bit of this weird crossover. As much as we like to sort of keep, sports and sort of, and politics or whatever you want to call it. I don't even know if, you could call it politics aside, and just separate. And we like to just sort of do sports as sports. The reality is that, that what we're seeing is that, Salt Lake City or Utah County, I know that, down in BYU and stuff like that, they were treating the coronavirus sort of in a much more lax way than some other, cities are treating it. Certain schools and campuses have been treating it in a much more lax way than other schools have been treating it. And as a result, some of that then, bleeds into the kind of availability you're going to see amongst these teams for who can play football and who can't. And if you're a USC or a Stanford, and you care that much about playing football, or you're CU and you care that much about playing football, then you take these more severe precautions with the hope that then your team, at least every Saturday, is going to be eligible to play compared to some of these other teams. And so I think that you start to see a little bit of a weird dynamic in terms of how that works. And I think that, all we can really say is that, for the teams that aren't able to play as much football this year because of more coronavirus cases or not, that's on them.
Yeah. I think back to one of our discussions we had in a latter episode when we were talking about Boulder specific at the beginning. It's like, how much does outside of football play a part in the ability to play football? And like you said, we're seeing that at the schools in the cities that are taking a little bit more lax, that are prohibiting the start of the season. Like Utah hasn't played a game yet, and we're basically 3 weeks into the season. And like you said, it's like, in terms of fairness, it's like, well, at some point, just kind of be like, well, tough luck, kind of wait for next year. Like, you're not going to play enough games to really have a say in what's going on in the conference. But I mean, we'll have to see. We'll have to wait another week, 2 weeks for another Colorado game. But hey, I'm really excited to see this team go up against nothing against a really, really good USC team in the Coliseum in a potentially Pac-12 South deciding game. But with that, Kieran and I want to thank you guys so much for coming to another episode. If you want to see more of us, check us out on our social medias, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. If you want to check us out on YouTube, check us out at Dashboards TV. You'll see our shows as well as the other shows in the Pac-12 schools. Definitely recommend checking them out. They're super awesome. Check out our website, dashboards.tv, for super awesome content, more of that. And check out Sports Pac-12. Super awesome partnership we got going on. Some of us are writing columns, joining in on some podcasts, all the good stuff, all Pac-12, everything you want to hear. But with that, we will see you guys next week. And as always, go Buffs!